Hello all, it's your friendly neighbourhood old geek here, and I've got an old edition of White Dwarf to peruse today. This is issue 8 from August and September 1978, so White Dwarf is still bi-monthly, whereas the Dragon has gone monthly at this point. It's 60p, $1.15 USA money. Right, let's have a look at this. The cover. Big and bold and colourful. Looks like that's some form of... Is it a statue that's been animated? Some sort of idol being animated by that red-robed wizard behind? He looks really, really frightening with that electricity exploding from his hand and that long white beard, and appears to be blowing a wind while being carried by these zombie-like things. This looks like a great encounter. Pretty terrifying, and the people caught up in it are clearly in trouble. One thing I can say about this cover that I don't like. Look, it's a bright cover. It's a sort of cover that makes you think, I'll have a look at that. But look, see the text, the science, the fantasy games, and look, that black text under White Dwarf, you can barely read it. And looking further down, this issue, this is readable, but it's not very clear. So you need to adapt the text. If you're going to have colourful covers, you need to adapt. Think about what the text that's on the cover looks like, because you can say it does say Valley of the Four Winds, monster modelling, and man beast, but it's not very clear. And this bit up here is almost unreadable. Still, I like the cover. I like the cover art anyway. Cover text is terrible. Hopefully they'll sort that out. Moving on. Phoenix Model Developments. I've never heard of Phoenix Models, though they do look a bit risque. Look at all these all this nudity that's on show. Look at it. Yes, it's all very, very risque. Yes. Based in Northampton in England. Specialists in modelling boobs and bums. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying. Okay, chivalry and sorcery rules. We've seen that mentioned in a few issues now. That's a New York advert, but it's going through Games Workshop. More adverts. Because last issue they did say they're expanding the size of the magazine, but they're doing that by adding in more adverts. So as long as there's enough content in addition to the adverts, that's fine. Right. Let's have a look at Ian Livingston's editorial. The major American games conventions are currently in full swing, and new releases in science fiction and fantasy games appear to be never ending. They're still not. We're 45 years down the line and they're still ploughing them out. Origins is over with the news that there was a record attendance of over 4,000 people, and the record attendance is also expected at Gen Con later on this month. This puts it a bit into perspective about how niche the hobby was. You had the UK Games Expo recently with, I think it was 40,000 people, and that's in Britain. And there are American conventions that are considerably bigger, so it's a lot more mainstream now. I remember it exploding though in the early 80s. Over here, about 82 to 85 was really when you saw the cartoon on telly, and lots of little shops springing up with gaming. I believe it happened in America about 2 or 3 years beforehand, so we're still before that big explosion. During the last year, there's been an incredible rise in the popularity of science fiction and fantasy games. At first, they were put down as kid stuff by traditional wargamers. Well, the wargame nerds are going to do that, and also the people who saw it as being nerdy would put it down as being nerd stuff. It's only in recent years that it's seen as being a less a hobby that receives less derision. I mean, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. All right. Talking of conventions, we are pleased to inform you that all the editorial staff of White Dwarf will be at Dragon Meet 1 on the 26th of August. That's going to be the first British convention. We will all be wearing chainmail, at least to avoid damage from angry readers, plus 2 rotten tomatoes. Hope to see you there. Right, what we got? Monster modelling, Fiend Factory, Molten Magic, Treasure Chest, Man Beast, Open Box, Letters, Calgar, Valley of the Four Winds. Those are the things to look at today. That cover illustration was by Derek Hayes. Don't know the name. But I do like the work. Monster modelling. Right. So it's making your own stuff. And I can understand why people would do that, because miniatures are expensive and sometimes impractical, and you can break them, and if you spend a lot of money on a miniature that is fragile, then you have an aversion to using it. But if you spend a little bit of time, but just a few pennies on making something cheap, you don't mind if you break it. I'm not much of a modeler, but if you know my the Old Geek header on my YouTube homepage with all the blue outlining and whatever, that's done by Chris from Crooked Staff, and he has a modelling channel, and he's done a lot of this modelling work. And he, at the moment, he's focusing on making 2.5D modular dungeon pieces. Now, I won't use these things because I don't play the game on a battle mat or with squares or anything like that. So that sort of thing doesn't bother me. I have played in games where he's brought those out and used them, and they work well because they're modular, so you're not fixed, and B, they're quick, and they are quite effective, and he does them on a very, very tight budget, all made with cardboard and printouts and matchsticks and stuff like that. So if you like that sort of thing, check out his channel. I'm not much of a modeler though, but I do appreciate having this sort of article in the magazine, because it would have appealed to me as a young teen with limited finances, shall we say. That's if I played the game with models all the time, which I don't. I will use them on occasion, but I'm not one for counting squares and battle maps and that sort of thing. Big battle, yes. Little battles, no, I don't need to bother. But it's a good idea for an article. Let's have a little look at what the Fiend Factory has to say. Oh, and there's Monster Mark. Does anyone who knows about the future of White Dwarf, anyone know the date at which they stop using Monster Mark? How much more of this we've got to put up with? Anyway, what have we got here? What on earth? Stinwikodech. Stinwikodech? That's an odd name. Is it a made-up one, or is it one from mythology and folklore? I haven't got a clue, but I am tempted to look it up. A 8 foot tall, vaguely humanoid creature with a frog-like head and covered in thick, close-cropped hair. Okay, so it's like a frog bear sort of thing. Very high dexterity. Oh, they give it stats. Intelligence 1d4 plus 4 and dexterity 1d6 plus 10. Okay, they're giving stats to monsters. Attacks with its tongue. It's a hairy bullywug. A big hairy bullywug. The tween. Oh, they made the Fiend Folio. Yeah, they were fairly interesting. One of those monsters that would have to use maybe once in the entirety of a campaign, but it would make for an interesting encounter when it happened. I don't mind them. Rock Beast. That's not a very imaginative name. It could have gems inside its stomach. Okay. Yeah, monster mark. Yeah. Carbuncles, they made it into the Fiend Folio. They're odd. Not a fan of those. Not much of a fan of those. Then what's this? Can't read what that says up there. Little blob of yellow jelly. What does that say? Symbioticus. Oh, is it a symbiotic jelly? If it's what became a symbiotic jelly, then that made the Fiend Folio. It is, isn't it? Reading this about the illusions of the monsters, or a version of it made it into the Fiend Folio. I've just seen this. Roger, couldn't you have invented a simpler name? Yeah, it's been yeah, they've adapted it for the Fiend Folio, which is good. But I think is that Chaoticus Symbioticus? Whatever. Got to sort out the script though, because that looks hard to read. Coffer Corpse. Itchy nose. Do apologise. I love coffer corpses. I think they're a really, really interesting undead type creature. The way they come back at you. Yes, I think they're great. One of my favourite of the less traditional undead. Whirlwind. I'm guessing that says Whirlwind, even though again the name is hard to read. Oh, Whirler. I think this made it into the Fiend Folio as a Vortex. I think they changed the name again. Made it into a Vortex. Turling. 7 feet tall, 4 feet broad, curious beasts are covered in thick woolly red hair which molts profusely. A Turung. Okay, Turung. Can do webs. It's a spidery sort of effect. Okay. Yeah, I'm really glad to see that Coffer Corpse, one of my favourite monsters. I do actually rather like the symbiotic jelly. I think that's quite clever as well, and the tween. So we've got some half decent creatures appearing in amongst dross like the carbuncle, and things that aren't very interesting like the rock beast. The vortex, never really much of a fan of those, but there's some good ones in there. Molten magic. I said last issue, I thought this is a bit of a pointless one. It's just an advert for new models that have come out. And the problem with it is the pictures aren't very good and the descriptions are very, very limited. I'd rather see an honest review of the quality of the model rather than just a list and this is what it is. Because the pictures aren't good enough to make it appear to be clear. So I think that is a pointless feature. Treasure chest. Critical hits. Okay, so this is where White Dwarf attempts to bring in a critical hit system. I'm going to say it now. I've said it before on my channel. I don't mind critical hits and fumbles in a system that is defined and designed around having them, where there is an obvious risk and reward in terms of weapon and action choice when it comes to the likelihood and the impact of the critical hit or the fumble. But there are some clear points that have to be made. One, characters must not be punished for simply doing their job. That's a difficult one to overcome. Two, they don't work on a D20 unless you start adding extra rolls and extra modifiers. And if the system takes significantly longer, because D&D combat is meant to be quick, if the system ends up taking significantly longer, then it fails. So the intention of the combat is important. Fumbles being a flat 5% on a D20. Once your fighter gets 2 or more attacks per round, you start to see fighters throwing their swords away willy-nilly and stabbing their mates. And that's often because the fumble tables themselves are very, very badly designed. Yes, you can mitigate things by having sensible, mild effects, such as a penalty on initiative the next round, or your opponent gets a +1 to hit the next round, or you get a +1 to hit the next round. That sort of thing. Little minor effects are fine. But when you start going, ha ha ha, it's funny, you just stabbed your mate in the back for the 10th time, it's not funny. It's not even fun. So yeah, they have to be balanced out, and they have to feel authentic regarding the nature of the class. And when a highly skilled warrior if the fumble system just means a highly skilled warrior starts throwing his sword around on twice as many rounds as usual because he now has 2 attacks per round, then it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They're meant to get better as they get more skillful. Fumbles and crits worked in MERP. MERP, you only have 1 attack per round. Percentile dice. Chances varied by weapon choice. Risk and reward. Riskier weapons often did a lot more damage. And as fighters got better, their critical range and effect increased massively. So you felt, even though it was static based on your weapon, the fumble chance, because a dagger would be like 1 or 2%, but you'd have to put up with doing a little less damage. But a 1 or 2% chance of fumble, I think it's 1% for a dagger, whereas I think longbows were about 6%. But you got your risk and reward, and that's built in, and that's fine. Anyway, I'm not going to read a critical hit one because I just don't like critical hits in D&D. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. There's the Asprey system again. Oh yes, it's the D&D experience deals with the points to be scored for success in percentage abilities. No, keep it simple, stupid. Monsters, loot, and little bonuses for achieving important things in terms of the world. That's all you really need, in my opinion. Okay. What's this about a bard? Oh, it's to do with experience points for successful use of ability. I wouldn't do it. It just results in players spamming abilities and potentially causing arguments because the DM then has to make an extra judgment call based on whether the ability is used to forward the quest. Okay, the news. Talking about the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook, which is due to be released any time now. Woo! The Man Beast. What is this? Oh, it's a new character class, which is ideal for schizos. The Man Beast is male or female of chaotic or neutral alignment with a tendency towards evil. Makes sense. Who has decided to give the bestial side of his nature full rein so as to indulge more freely in his favourite hobby, killing. Okay, can we already see the problem with this character class? Put it in the hands of teenage trolls and the game will disintegrate. Yes, it might be fun for a few sessions, but the game will disintegrate in the hands of those who are not mature enough to deal with this sort of class. So, very low experience point requirements. Well, they've got a standard armor class. Looks like they can't wear armor, but that goes down very quickly. Attack with claws and bite. That's 2 claws and 1 bite. That's 3 attacks per round. Okay, a monster, even an intelligent monster, possibly masquerading as some form of NPC, but a player character. No. And did I say no? Not interested. Go away. Open box. These are the reviews. Space Marines. Is it before Warhammer had their Space Marine things? Warhammer 40k and all that. £2.95. That's quite cheap. The aim of these rules is to cover tactical ground combat between humans and aliens in the 22nd century. Okay. And how to introduce Space Marines into Dungeons and Dragons and Metamorphosis Alpha. Well, Metamorphosis Alpha is sci-fi, isn't it? I believe. Never saw it. D&D isn't. No, thank you. The Monster Manual. A review of the Monster Manual. The Monster Manual. Okay, it goes into details of what it all shows. Mentions the UK edition with a soft cover version. Don't know how much that retailed for originally. £6.95 for the hardcover by the looks of things. A lot of new monsters, particularly prominent among which are the devils, inhabitants and rulers of the plains of hell. Yes. A splendid night hag. Best drawing in the book, in my opinion. It's certainly one of the best creature drawings, but Treasure by Dave Trampier on the treasure table bit is the best drawing in the book. And that's objective fact. Sorry. Excuse me. If every DM and player didn't buy it, I'd be very surprised. Well, players shouldn't buy it. DMs should buy it. Players shouldn't know. Players will buy it. It's without doubt the best thing that TSR produced so far. Yeah, it's a classic book. It's one of those all-time gaming classic books. It is great range of creatures. It could do with a little bit more descriptive detail in places. Some quality old school artwork. But it's they're classic creatures. Creatures from myth. Devils and demons. Brilliant. Lovely array of creatures. War of Wizards, face-to-face simulation combat between 2 individual sorcerers or priests, or a combination of both. Okay. 6.95. Starships and Spacemen. 80 plus A4 pages of rules for yet another multiplayer role-playing game. It's 1978. They're already getting tired of all these games being churned out. Oh, he says he likes, Don Turnbull likes the rules, considers them carefully planned and well executed. Okay. Yes, it's not about it. He quite likes it. Quite likes it. Mostly favourable reviews in this issue. Okay. Letters page. Let's see what the grogs are ranting about nowadays. So Lou Pulsifer in the first letter is coming back against Ian Waugh, who lambasted him in the previous issue. I'm sorry, Ian Waugh objects to free speech. Blah de blah de blah. Oh, is this more well actually? Anyone who claims that the experience of others of no use to him is a supreme egotist. Oh, here we go. The thing is, these days you have these arguments on message boards, don't you? And people can reply instantly. Back in these times, it was 2 months between editions. So, assuming it would take, there's a deadline to get letters in, the authors have got weeks to think about their replies. Roger Musson is wanting to defend realism in combat. Yeah, this is coming back against Gygax, I believe, because Gygax, yeah, this is like, well, actually, Gary, Nerd Wars. Okay, what does John Sapienza from Washington DC have to say? In my weapons list in White Dwarf 7, I put the damage from crossbows as being greater than that from the corresponding handbows, because I felt, without having hard data to back it up, that the crossbow was more powerful. Okay. Right. The article states that crossbow bolts went through armour far more readily than longbow arrows. Right. Have you ever watched the Todd's Workshop things on this? Pretty much put paid to the myth that either crossbows or arrows, or regular arrows, would pierce plate armour. They would not. They would shatter on impact. They might cause the odd dent, and yes, a crossbow is certainly at shorter range. There is more kinetic energy. But the longbow had the effect of the benefits of arcing fire, faster rate of fire, and ultimately, on European battlefields, proved to be the more versatile weapon. I don't have an issue with, though, certainly heavy crossbows, doing a little bit more damage. And maybe even having it range dependent, because at short range they were known to be brutal. But should they be a better weapon than a longbow? No. No. And they couldn't. Even mail armour, they struggled to pierce it. Plate armour, not at all. Leather armour, yeah. Soft armours, yes, they could. They had some piercing ability. Because cloth armour was tougher than a lot of people believe. Anyway. And, one from Australia. Worldwide. Worldwide influence. Calgar, haven't read it at all, but there's a little bit of naughtiness going on in that last picture. Yeah, Calgar's having a bit of entertainment, adult stuff. Here's dragon meat. Doesn't say how much it's going to be on there. Never been to a dragon meat. I never went to a dragon meat. Of course, this was London in 1978, and my parents would not have allowed me to go when I was 6 years old. Valley of the Four Winds. This is fiction. Fiction, schmiction, that's what I say. A little map. Farondale Lake Loom. Classified ads. I've been reading through all these, most issues. I'm not going to read through them all now. Because it's same, isn't it, really? I like to see lots of ones dotted around the UK, though, because it shows that the hobby is spreading out. And we can already see there's Warrington there. That's up north. Grimsby, that's in the northeast. Birchington in Kent, that's the far southeast. Wisbech in Cambridgeshire, that's east. Basildon, Southend, that's London. So, yeah, nice to see. More adverts. Yes. Games Workshop advert, of course. D&D box set now at $7.50. Is that the same? Just want to see. Hardback Monster Manual imported $6.95, so they haven't released their softback one yet. I would like to see what the price was of the softback one. And there's the Sorcerer's Cave advert to finish. Right, so this edition, decent cover, bad lettering on the front cover though. Too many adverts, but we know why they're using them, because they want to fill out the page count and bring in a bit more money. Articles, Molten Magic is a waste of time. Letters were funny. Fiction, no, I don't bother reading it. Open Box, yeah, few reviews, very positive reviews. Man Beast, waste of time in terms of a character class, maybe as a monster or an NPC, okay. Treasure Chest, I didn't really like the addition to the Treasure Chest this week, because it talked about bringing in critical hits to a system that really doesn't want them. And the Fiend Factory, some classics, but very much a mixed bag. Monster modelling, I could see that being very useful, and I would have given that a go as a kid. So, in my opinion, White Dwarf is in a little bit of a slump at the moment. There are some regular features that could do with dropping, and I don't think some of what they've put in this issue has been very well thought through. But it is nice to see some decent monsters, especially the Coffer Corpse, love that, creeping in for the first time. So, White Dwarf, little bit of a slump. I believe the last edition of Dragon was pretty good, so Dragon's got the edge at the moment. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this run through. I've been the Old Geek, and I'll see you soon.